Talk about that a little bit.
Well, what the title of that one is called "Of Varying Degrees," and my thought behind it was on the left-hand side. There's a a tree with its black and red, no leaves or anything on it, and the sky is very red. There's some black in there, and to me that was showing anxiety, depression. As you go to the right, there's the green leaves and there's flowers on it. There's flowers down at the bottom. So my thought was, everybody deals with depression, anxiety. It's just varying degrees. When it gets to a point where you're rendered unable to function is when it becomes like a clinical depression, anxiety. But also, as you work on, when we came up with that title about the subtitle, mental health, mental illness, mental matters. You and I had talked about it somewhat, that we use measures in order to be mentally healthy, in order to help with our mental illness, and we can achieve mental wellness. And there you've got the tree with the flowers, and
so Cynthia, did you do all of this at one time? This
Yes.
picture at one time, or did it come at different points of your life?
Well, this was around the time that I had been doing my paintings and my pastels.
Yes.
And I had begun to, the tree was my own, this represented myself.
Mm-hmm.
And the different colors in the moons, the suns, were showing my emotional states. And so I had done some similar things. One of my paintings had been a tree with the flowers, and I had done some things, a tree similar, showing like mania and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was thinking about this, my husband and I went on a little trip, and he was like, why don't you bring your pastels, and why don't you see if you can come up with a different logo? And this is what happened on a little 2-day getaway.
That's awesome. Awesome. And so what the viewer has the opportunity to see is more of your artwork. Not
Mm-hmm.
just your artwork, but your poetry as well.
Yeah, and I have some articles and some little word clusters. I've got them broken up so you can, yeah.
Awesome. Dee, what's in your display? You have how many displays?
I have 3 cases.
Okay, can you just go into detail about what you've shared with us?
Absolutely. In one of them, I do have a painting, and it's of a butterfly, which symbolizes transformation.
Oh, I like that.
So we can transform ourselves from someone who might be a mess with anxiety, depression, mania, and into someone more stable. So I have a butterfly in my case. I have the one case that I already talked about with my coping skills toolbox that has all the skills, coping things. I love to use Play-Doh. The smell of Play-Doh is a comfort smell for me, and to squeeze it in my hand helps me reduce stress. So play with Play-Doh. I have colored markers and colored pens in them, and those things help me when I'm feeling anxious. Maybe I can journal with colored pens. Maybe I can color in an adult coloring book, and that really de-stresses me a lot. And my third case has a lot of inspirational sayings in it, a lot of things that encourage and uplift and inspire. So I have a thing of, it's a day planner, one of those desk calendars that is in my coping skills toolbox, and it has all those things on it. It has different inspirational sayings and quotes on each day of the year. And so I use that to uplift and inspire and encourage myself and help me be more stable on the rough days.
So I have to ask a question. Do you have more than one toolbox, or?
I just have the one, but I do have a lot of coping skills mechanisms that are not in the toolbox, such as listening to music and dancing and singing and exercise, things that you can't pack in a toolbox as such. So I have hundreds probably of coping skills that I use at different times. And even if they don't help, using them back to back, that passes time. And so if you can get through the time, then you can get through the rough spots.
That's good. That's good. So do you take that with you?
I do sometimes. I carry it in the car sometimes with me. It usually lives in my spare bedroom, but I can take it with me. I've taken it with me to counseling before. I've taken it with me to a park and sat there on the picnic tables and used it.
Do you add to it?
Yes, I add to it sometimes and take some things out. It's full. So if I add something, I have to take something out to make room.
How can you encourage someone else that's a very good idea. How can you encourage someone else to develop a coping skills, and where could they start?
I just tell them that it's a wonderful, awesome thing to have when you're having a rough day, to have a place you can go and you know that things are in there that are going to help you. And just start with something that makes you happy, that makes you smile. Maybe it's a book, maybe it's a painting, maybe it's a deck of cards, maybe it's jacks and balls. You know, you just don't know what each individual toolbox is going to be different for each individual person. But I'd like to encourage people that that's someplace you can go when you're stressed out, and you don't have to think about it. You don't have to think in the moment like, where is my Play-Doh? Where is my colored markers? You know,
just go to your box.
Just go to your box.
And when I hear box, I hear shoebox. I hear, what are those plastic crates?
Mine is a plastic crate with a handle, and it has a shelf in the top of it that you can put things in, a small shelf, and you lift that tray out, and then underneath is just an open space.
That's a good idea also for kids.
Excellent. My friend who introduced the concept to me is a children's therapist, and she uses it with her kids in therapy.
Good idea. Good idea. So there's another display case did you go into detail about the other one of a friend of yours who's had?
Not a little bit, but he does, with his therapy, his therapist does encourage him to use artwork because he has some trouble sometimes working it out in words. And he has some, to me, they're very profound, his very short writings and 3 pictures, and then also he just recently added to it. His father had given him. He was in a bad accident and had. He adds this into his case, but he had a severe brain injury, and he had a lot to deal with. At the age of 14, his father had given him a car, and his father taught him all kinds of things, how to work with this car. And so when he was having to work through these injuries and trying to remember things, that became a real emotional or wellness toolbox for him, and he still does work on it, and he swears he'll never get rid of that car.
That's cool. Yeah, that's cool. That's very nice. And then I put together two display cases. One that I identified as Black Mental Health Matters. Now, I want to also say that mental illness is mental illness, no matter what culture or what race you are. But in the Black community, there are some things that prevent people of color, not just Black people, but people of color, from seeking assistance and help. And so the display case that I put together is just simply putting out the diagnosis. And I had a therapist who, friend of mine, who gave me some suggestions. And so I took the suggestions that she gave me and kind of built from there. And it talks about mental health disparity factors, talks about some diagnoses that are looked at as mental illnesses or mental wellness. It talks about life with anxiety, life with depression. It's more informational. Life with bipolar disorder, life with psychoses, and life in recovery. There is several pictures of people of color reminding whoever looks at the display that you're not alone. And one of the reasons that I actually wanted to put together that case was because questions have come to me as I talk to people in the community about how do I pay for these services, or why is this important to obtain mental health, and how do I obtain a mental health clinician, therapist, doctor, caseworker who looks like me? Because, as I say, mental health is mental health. Many times you're more comfortable when you're receiving services from someone who looks like you. And so that was one of the main things that I kind of stopped at that, but I'm going to add more stuff that talks about Black clinicians. How do I obtain one? Where are they in my area? And also to look at the fact that if someone is interested in becoming a clinician, what are the benefits of that? How does that affect their community? What is the recruitment process for becoming a therapist or a psychiatrist? And what is the educational part of it? Those things I actually kind of stopped at, but need to be added to that. But that was my reasoning for going into the mental wellness in the Black community. And then another part that I touched on, but as I was putting it together, I shared this with you, Cynthia, how as I was putting that together, it just brought back a lot of unanswered questions about mental illness in children. And so I started with that, but I didn't move forward with that. So I guess I'm open to any kind of suggestions, or if you want to discuss that briefly about the impact on mental illness in children.
It's no doubt that it's a staggering impact. We have a lot of children struggling with mental health issues. We have children as young as 10 attempting suicide. It is really a big issue for children, and they do need to be screened, and they do need to be helped as much as possible. I know my brother and I were screened when we were young, but my mental illness symptoms started at 13. So you know that children are affected of all ages and all races and all socioeconomic statuses. There are children everywhere who are struggling with mental health issues, and we need to be aware of that, and we need to be looking for that in our children and helping them to get the help they need, because the sooner you get help, the better your prognosis is. The younger you get help, the closer to when the symptoms start, the better your outlook is in the long run.
What I've also heard too, and I know this to be a fact myself, that when you're living with someone with a mental illness, the environmental factors actually you're more likely, a child is more likely to have some, I don't even know how to say this, some repercussions from living in a home with someone with mental illness.
That is true.
And so I guess that was what, as I started putting this together, growing up in a home that there was mental illness. It was never diagnosed, but it was evident as I got older. It's like, wait a minute, there's something a little bit different in my home. So as I started this, it just kind of touched deep. And tell me, what do you hope to gain